Lumix has just made a bunch of announcements. We've got a new zoom lens, we've got a white S9, we've got a bunch of firmware updates, but we also got a new camera announced, and that's what I want to talk about today. The LUMIX S5D. It's basically the same LUMIX S5, same body, same IBIS, same autofocus, same recording codecs, everything from the original S5, but it comes with one major update, and that's that it comes with support for the DJI LiDAR module when used with the RS3 gimbal. I assume it also includes compatibility with the DJI Focus Pro grip as well. It's not explicitly mentioned, but I assume it does. The reason why I want to make a video about LUMIX S5D is because I've been meaning to make a video about the LUMIX S5 Mark I for a while now. I've been meaning to revisit it, to pull my original S5 out of retirement and just spend a day shooting on it, just to sort of revisit the camera and look at the picture quality. Since I've got the LUMIX S5 2X, I've just exclusively been shooting on that because it's a fantastic camera, great for YouTubing, it's great for professional shoots, has a bunch of quality of life updates. But the one thing that the original S5 still has is that it still has superior image quality over the Mark IIs. Something with the update in the LUMIX S5 Mark II meant that the image processing changed. You know, these are subtle changes, but the image seemed a little sharper, seemed, you know, a little bit more processed. There was a little bit more noise there. It just seemed less organic, maybe less pleasing than the original S5. Again, subtle changes, but the differences were fairly apparent when I moved over originally to the LUMIX S5 Mark II. So on Friday, I rigged my DJI Focus Pro system up to my original LUMIX S5, slapped the NATO rail that comes with the Focus Pro onto the right side of the camera, threaded the rod through that, rigged up the focus motor, rigged up the handle on the right hand side. I was using it with my 35mm DZO film Vespid and then plugged it all in and went out to give myself an impression of what shooting on an S5D might be like. As you can see, the images I got back were stunning. Like, I think I've forgotten what it was like to shoot on this camera and the quality of its footage. You know, I'm so used to shooting on the LUMIX S5 Mark II, which is a fantastic camera, it has fantastic image quality, but there's just something a little bit nicer about this original S5 footage. It feels smoother, a little bit more organic, and at times I felt like I was getting images that were comparable to my Red Komodo. Something about the thickness of the color and the codec and the vlog. All the images that you're seeing would be, you know, comparable to what you get out of an S5D. For a lot of people, they're going to be asking, like, you know, is the S5 still a relevant camera? And from a pure image quality perspective, my answer would be absolutely. Like, if you like these images and you think they look nice, these are all coming out of a 4-year-old camera with a relatively affordable cine lens. Like, this is a really lightweight setup. It's certainly much more convenient than my Komodo. The difference between using the S5D with electronic lenses and the way that I've got it rigged up, obviously I'm using a focus motor here, so the LiDAR module is using the focus motor to drive the autofocus, but with the new LUMIX S5D, if you're using electronic lenses, the camera itself with the lens will drive that autofocus, so it means you don't need to use a focus motor with it, which is cool. So this LiDAR integration is nothing new. Most of the LUMIX cameras received a firmware update, I think maybe about a year ago, so the S1, S1H, and I think also the Mark IIs, to allow the DJI focus systems to basically integrate with the cameras and control the camera's autofocus. So I don't know if it's a hardware limitation in the original S5 body that prevented this, but the original S5 did not get this firmware update. Maybe that is why they had to refresh the camera, maybe they had to add a bit of hardware or a bit more memory to it to allow for this, and that's why they're refreshing the camera now with the 5D. Obviously the original S5, you know, lacks some of the quality of life features of the new Mark IIs, but using it alongside the DJI Focus Pro was a bit of a revelation. This LiDAR system works really well with this camera, and combined with the superior image quality, is quite an interesting package to shoot on. I'm still in the process of testing this DJI Focus Pro, so expect a longer review video on it sometime in the future. There are some caveats to using LiDAR. Obviously, you've got to rig additional stuff up. Things like close focus are affected with LiDAR because of the limitations of where the LiDAR system is mounted. which is typically on the hot shoe of cameras like this, does mean that the image from the LiDAR and from the lens isn't totally aligned. So there may be some discrepancies between what the LiDAR sees and what the camera sees. Lumix did a great job updating the IBIS on the Mark IIs, and I did notice the limitations of the Mark I IBIS system when I was out shooting. It just didn't handle my handheld footage as well. I wanted to do some push-ins and pull-ins with the DJI Focus Pro, and you can see that there's a bit more wobbles, a bit more joltiness, jumps and stuff that you just wouldn't find with the Mark IIs. You could stick the Mark IIs in the new E-stabilization mode and probably achieve a very gimbal-like pull-in and pull-out. I just couldn't really get on this Mark I setup. And obviously also some of the codecs, you didn't get open gate and stuff like that. Shooting 50 frames a second, you're still cropping in, but you get a 420 recording codec rather than the 422 that you can get in the Mark IIs. It still has a micro HDMI port. Unlike the S5 Mark II, the S5 ships with B-RAW out of the box, which is kind of cool. But as you'll see from the B-RAW comparison video that I did, they did massively improve the B-RAW quality on the Mark IIs, but the fact that you get B-RAW functionality out of the box in this camera is still fantastic. So let's talk about pricing now and how this new refreshed LUMIX S5D fits in with the rest of the LUMIX landscape. So when I originally bought the LUMIX S5 back in 2020, I think I paid about £1,800 and that was body only. And the new LUMIX S5D will be launching at around £1,400, but that does include the new tiny 18-40 zoom lens, which I think is retailing at around £520. So if you minus the cost of that kit lens, it gets you back down to around £880 for a body only version. Given that the original LUMIX S5 is still selling on places like Amazon for about £800, you know, it's like an 80 quid upgrade for that LiDAR integration. A used LUMIX S5 Mark I, you know, from a reputable reseller like MVP or Wex, you know, you can pick them up for around £600, £500 if you're lucky. You can also buy a used LUMIX S5 2X from someone like Wex for £1,400. And you can buy a S5 II new for about £1,500, S5 2X about £1,700, £1,800. You could also pick up a used S1 or S1H, like Wex was selling off their stock of S1H about a month ago for £900. So you could get an S1H and a Focus Pro, you know, for £1,700. I think there is an argument that Lumix probably could have put a few more features in this new refresh model, maybe tweak the IBIS, you know, given the new E-stabilization or whatever. But it doesn't mean that this isn't a capable production camera. And I still have a lot of love for these older cameras. Now, I'm not saying you should go straight out and pick up a LUMIX S5 or S5D. For most people, the Mark II cameras are still going to be the better buy. But for anyone who is just interested in pure image quality, the LUMIX S5 and S5D still hold their own. As you can see from the images in this video, the LUMIX S5 still has a lot going for it. Despite what their manufacturers might tell you, despite what YouTubers like me might tell you, just because a new camera, a Mark II or Mark III, has been released, it doesn't mean that your old kit becomes any less capable. It doesn't mean that it's no longer capable of delivering beautiful images, as I hope, you know, the images in this video have demonstrated with the original Mark I. I would love to know what you think about these new announcements, particularly the new LUMIX S5D. What do you think about the original Mark I? Is anyone out there still using it? Drop your comments down below. Let's get a discussion going. Thanks for watching. Make sure you give this video a like, subscribe if you're not, and until next time, I'll see you later.